My name is Rachel. I'm 34 years old, and for as long as I can remember, love in my family was never given freely. It was weighed, measured, and assigned a price tag. My father built his fortune as a sharp, unapologetic corporate accountant. To him, everything in life was a transaction. In his eyes, my older sister, Vanessa, and my brother, Julian, were his best investments. Vanessa was the glamorous real estate agent who married into money, while Julian was the polished corporate lawyer who never missed an opportunity to stroke Dad's ego. Those two could do absolutely no wrong. Every accomplishment they made was rewarded with lavish dinners, luxury vacations, and endless praise. Then there was me, a single mother working 45 hours every week as a graphic designer, doing everything I could to give my 8-year-old son, Leo, a stable and happy life. Leo is the sweetest kid you'll ever meet. Gentle, kind-hearted, and completely crazy about his grandfather. But in my father's eyes, my life choices made me a bad investment. Since I hadn't married rich or climbed some fancy corporate ladder, Dad treated Leo like he was somehow less than everyone else. At every family gathering, Vanessa's 2 children and Julian's daughter were showered with designer clothes, expensive gadgets, and nonstop affection. Leo? He was lucky if Grandpa even remembered his birthday with one of those generic greeting cards. For years, I swallowed every subtle insult, convincing myself that keeping the peace was worth it. For Leo's sake. I had no clue just how cruel my family was willing to become until one cold Friday evening, at the most exclusive steakhouse in the city. Dad had organized the dinner to celebrate a major personal milestone. He made it crystal clear that he had personally handled every reservation, and even pre-ordered everyone's meals to make sure everything went perfectly. We all settled around a massive mahogany table as the waiter approached carrying a tray loaded with sizzling, dry-aged 12-ounce filet mignons, each one priced at $120. One by one, he placed a steak in front of Vanessa's 2 kids, then Julian's daughter, and finally the adults. When he reached Leo, he gently placed a plain wire basket filled with cold, dry bread rolls in front of him. Leo stared down at the basket, then looked at his cousin's plates. His big brown eyes slowly filled with confusion. "Mom," he whispered softly, "where's mine?" I turned toward the waiter, ready to speak, but before I could say a word, Vanessa jumped in with that same fake, sugary smile. "Oh, we didn't order for your son," she said as she pushed the bread basket even closer to Leo. "The reservation head count was very specific, Rachel. Honestly, we just didn't think he'd even enjoy high-end steak." My blood instantly ran ice cold. "He's 8 years old, Vanessa," I said. "Every other child here has a full meal." I looked at my father, expecting, just for once, for him to do the right thing. Instead, he never even lifted his eyes from his plate. Calmly slicing into his steak, he said, "You should have packed him something, dear. Budgeting is important, and extras just weren't part of tonight's plan." I watched Leo quietly swallow his tears and slowly push the bread basket away. I didn't argue. I didn't lose my temper. I simply looked around the table and said one quiet word. "Noted." Then I ordered Leo a full meal with my own money. The humiliation at that steakhouse stuck with me for days. Every time I looked at Leo, I could still picture the confusion in his eyes, as he watched his cousins enjoy expensive steaks while he was handed nothing but stale bread. I made him a promise that night. Things were going to change. 4 days later, life handed me an opportunity one never saw coming. My father called and asked if I could stop by his house to help sort through his mountain of monthly paperwork and administrative mail, a boring task neither Vanessa nor Julian had ever bothered to help with. As usual, I was the dependable one whenever something needed to get done. While Dad stepped outside into the garden to take a phone call, I sat alone at the heavy oak desk in his study, organizing stacks of envelopes. That's when something caught my eye. An unsealed manila folder with a typed label across the front. Whitaker Family Trust, Annual Disbursements. Curiosity got the better of me. I carefully opened the folder, expecting nothing more than routine financial records. Instead, my stomach dropped. The trust had been established years earlier by my late mother with one very clear instruction: equal financial support for every living grandchild. Simple. Fair. Exactly what Mom would have wanted. But as I flipped through the detailed ledgers from the past 3 years, it became painfully obvious that fairness had completely disappeared. Hundreds of thousands of dollars had quietly been pulled from the trust. Vanessa alone had received more than $150,000 for things listed as private tutoring, exclusive sports academies, and enrichment programs for her children. Julian wasn't far behind. His records showed another $120,000 withdrawn for elite summer camps and equestrian therapy. Every single request carried approval signatures. Every one of them had supposedly been authorized by my father without hesitation. Then I turned to Leo's page. It was practically empty. Just one lonely entry from 2 years earlier. $150 for a basic orthopedic shoe fitting after Leo injured his ankle. That was it. That single line represented everything my son had ever received from the trust my mother created for all of her grandchildren. I felt sick. But then something else grabbed my attention. Looking closer at several of the most recent authorization forms, I noticed something that didn't sit right: the signatures. At first glance, they looked like Dad's handwriting. But the longer I stared, the more obvious it became. They weren't his. Several approvals for extra educational grants benefiting Vanessa's children had signatures that simply didn't match. I'd spent years watching my father sign birthday cards, legal papers, and checks. I knew his handwriting. These signatures were different. Not just slightly different. Completely off. That's when the entire picture finally came together. Vanessa and Julian weren't just taking advantage of Dad's favoritism. They were straight up skimming money from the family trust. Even worse, someone had been forging approval signatures to make it all look legitimate. The same people who couldn't spare a $120 steak for my little boy had no problem stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars meant for every grandchild, including Leo. My hands trembled. Not from fear. From anger. Real, white-hot anger. But I knew losing my temper right there would accomplish absolutely nothing. Anger makes people loud. Strategy makes people dangerous. So instead of confronting anyone, I quietly pulled out my phone. One by one, I took high-resolution photos of every ledger page, every forged authorization, every bank statement, every withdrawal record. Once I had everything safely backed up, I carefully returned the folder exactly where I'd found it. No one suspected a thing. The very next morning, I met with an independent estate attorney and an experienced forensic accountant. Within 48 hours, they confirmed exactly what I'd feared. The evidence pointed to systematic fraud. Vanessa and Julian had been siphoning money from the family trust for years. The total amount? More than $270,000. Legally speaking, it wasn't just unethical. It qualified as grand larceny and fraud. Then my attorney pointed out something that changed everything. In less than 2 weeks, my father was hosting his lavish 60th anniversary gala. A black tie celebration attended by more than 40 guests, including influential business associates, longtime friends, and extended family. During the event, Dad planned to officially sign paperwork giving Vanessa complete administrative control over the Whitaker family trust. If those documents were signed, Vanessa would gain full authority over every remaining dollar. She and Julian could drain whatever was left, and Leo would be cut out for good. That was the moment I realized I had exactly one chance. One opportunity to stop everything before it was too late. But I wasn't interested in making a dramatic accusation behind closed doors. Nah. I wanted the truth exposed where no one could ignore it. I wanted my father, my sister, and my brother to face the consequences of their arrogance, in front of every single person whose respect they valued. Over the next 10 days, my legal team and I worked nonstop. Together, we assembled 3 professionally bound black dossiers, Every page contained documented proof. Every receipt. Every forged signature. Every financial record. Every forensic report. Each binder was packed with evidence powerful enough to bring their perfect little image crashing down. And all that was left was waiting for the perfect moment. The night of the gala finally arrived. The ballroom inside Grand Oak Manor looked absolutely breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, champagne towers shimmered beneath the lights. And more than 40 of my father's wealthiest friends, business associates, and extended family members filled the room. Everyone was dressed in elegant black tie attire, laughing over glasses of wine, while waiters glided through the crowd carrying silver trays loaded with expensive hors d'oeuvres. My father stood proudly near the stage in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, soaking up every bit of admiration. Standing beside him were Vanessa and Julian. They looked like absolute royalty. Vanessa floated around the room in a floor-length emerald gown, smiling for everyone she met, playing the role of the devoted daughter who supposedly held the entire family together. Julian worked the room with effortless confidence, shaking hands, cracking jokes, and making sure everyone saw the perfect image they wanted to project. Looking at them, you'd never guess they were hiding a massive secret. Right at 8 p.m. My father stepped up to the podium and lightly tapped his champagne glass. The room instantly fell silent. He began speaking about his career, his accomplishments, and the legacy he'd spent decades building. Then his tone softened as he started talking about family. Tonight, he said, as I celebrate my 60th year, I want to make sure everything I've built remains in safe hands. My late wife and I created a trust for our grandchildren, and this evening I'm officially transferring full administrative control of the Whitaker Family Trust to my eldest daughter, Vanessa, whose integrity and devotion to this family have never wavered. The audience broke into enthusiastic applause. Vanessa gracefully walked toward the podium, accepting the microphone with what looked like a tear glistening in her eye. Fake as heck. Thank you, Dad, she said warmly. Family means everything to me. Fairness, equality, and protecting every child's future have always been promises I hold close to my heart. The irony would have been hilarious if it weren't so disgusting. I remained seated near the side of the ballroom, my hand resting calmly on the sleek black leather folder sitting in my lap. I waited, patiently, until every clap faded away. Then I stood, without rushing, without making a scene. I calmly walked toward the stage, picked up the spare microphone resting nearby, and looked directly at my father. Dad, I said, my voice steady and clear, before you sign those papers, I have a very special anniversary gift for you, and for Vanessa and Julian too. I think it perfectly reflects your family's true commitment to honesty. Every pair of eyes in the ballroom shifted toward me. I stepped into the spotlight carrying 3 identical black binders. One by one, I handed them to my father, Vanessa, and Julian. Dad frowned as he accepted his copy. Rachel, what's this? I smiled politely. Think of it as an itemized audit of your legacy. My voice echoed through the silent ballroom. Go ahead, open it. Vanessa opened hers first. She was probably expecting family photos or some sentimental scrapbook. Instead, every bit of color drained from her face. She went ghost white. The very first page displayed an enlarged copy of the steakhouse receipt from 2 weeks earlier. 6 premium $120 filet mignons had been pre-ordered for Vanessa's children, Julian's daughter, and the adults. Right beside them, one lonely basket of dry bread rolls, assigned to my 8-year-old son, Leo. Printed beneath the receipt was my father's exact quote. Budgeting is important. Whispers immediately spread across the room. Guests leaned closer, trying to understand what they were looking at. But I wasn't even close to finished. I looked calmly at my father, turned to page 3. His hands trembled as he slowly flipped the page. The ballroom became eerily quiet. Spread across those pages were the complete forensic accounting reports detailing more than $270,000 systematically drained from the Whitaker Family Trust over the previous 3 years. Every transaction. Every withdrawal. Every missing dollar. Below the financial summaries sat enlarged scans of forged authorization forms. The signatures looked convincing, until they were compared side by side with my father's genuine handwriting. The differences were impossible to ignore. I turned toward the crowd. While my son was treated like he wasn't worth a $120 dinner, I said calmly, Vanessa and Julian were busy stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from the trust my mother created for every grandchild. You could have heard a pin drop. I continued. And Dad, while you've spent tonight praising their honesty and integrity, they were preparing to empty whatever remained of that trust the moment you handed Vanessa full control. Julian suddenly shot to his feet. His wine glass slipped from his hand and exploded across the polished hardwood floor. This is ridiculous, he shouted. She's lying. Somebody call security and get her out of here. I didn't even flinch. Go ahead, I replied coolly. Call security. Better yet, have them escort my attorney and the police detective waiting in the lobby inside. They're already holding a formal subpoena. The silence that followed was absolutely brutal. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. My father slowly collapsed back into his chair, staring at his favorite children as the perfect image they'd spent years building completely fell apart right in front of everyone. Their golden reputation? Gone. Just like that. I didn't stay to watch the rest of the night unravel. My job was done. I quietly placed the microphone back on the podium, picked up my coat, and walked out of Grand Oak Manor with my head held high, leaving the truth to do the rest of the work. The fallout came fast. Faster than anyone in my family could have imagined. Before the gala had even officially ended, my father ordered the Whitaker family trust frozen immediately. Every transfer, withdrawal, and authorization was put on hold while an independent financial firm launched a full investigation. For the first time in years, no one could quietly move money behind closed doors. The audit uncovered exactly what the forensic accountant had already documented. There was no misunderstanding, no accounting error, no innocent explanation. The evidence was overwhelming. Every forged signature, every unauthorized withdrawal, every missing dollar. It all pointed straight to Vanessa and Julian. Faced with a mountain of undeniable proof, both of them had no choice but to sign legally binding agreements requiring them to repay every single cent they had stolen from the trust. If they refused, criminal charges were waiting. Their picture-perfect lives unraveled almost overnight. The luxury vacations disappeared. The designer shopping sprees stopped. The expensive lifestyle they'd spent years showing off came crashing down in record time. Funny how fast people get humbled when the money isn't flowing anymore. My father, for the first time in my life, actually saw the truth. Not the version he'd convinced himself to believe. The real one. He finally understood that while he'd been treating Vanessa and Julian like golden children, they'd been quietly betraying both him and my late mother's final wishes. The realization hit him hard. Hard enough to break the pride he'd carried for decades. Over the following weeks, my phone filled with voicemail after voicemail. Some came late at night, others early in the morning. Each one sounded more emotional than the last. His voice cracked as he apologized. He admitted he'd failed me. He admitted he'd failed Leo. He begged for another chance. He begged me to come back. He begged me to forgive him. Years earlier, I probably would have. Back then, I spent so much energy chasing his approval that I would have accepted even the smallest apology. But people change. And so had I. By then, I had finally realized something that should have been obvious all along. I didn't need my father's validation. And I definitely didn't need his money. The only opinion that truly mattered belonged to the little boy, who looked up at me every single day. So I made the hardest and healthiest decision of my life. I walked away. Completely. No more family dinners. No more fake smiles. No more pretending everything was okay just to keep the peace. I officially cut ties with the toxic cycle that had defined my entire childhood. And honestly, it was the most freeing decision I'd ever made. Today, Leo and I live in a beautiful home filled with something money could never buy. Peace, laughter, kindness, respect. Every evening, we sit down together for dinner. And every single meal reminds me of that night at the steakhouse. Not because of the humiliation, but because of what it taught me. I make sure Leo always knows his place at our table is permanent. He never has to earn love. He never has to compete for acceptance. And he'll never be treated like an afterthought simply because someone else thinks they're more important. I taught my son that a person's worth isn't measured by wealth, status, or the opinions of people who only value you when it's convenient. Your value comes from your character, from your integrity, from the way you treat others when no one's watching. Because at the end of the day, the people who made my son feel like he wasn't worth a $120 steak ended up losing something far more valuable: their reputation, their credibility, their family's trust, and the respect they spent a lifetime trying to build. As for Leo, he'll always have a seat at my table. Not because of money, not because of status, but because he's loved unconditionally. And that's something no one will ever be able to take away.